Hey, everybody. Welcome to this month's edition of the Azure Container Apps Community Livestream. I'm Anthony. I'm joined here by Sophia, who you've met before, and a couple of new faces. Sophia, do you want to say hi for a sec?
Hi. I hope everybody's doing well this morning. I'm I'm 8 p.m. in Container Apps. I'm been just doing stuff like that.
Awesome, and we have a couple of very special guests with us. With us today. So we'll start off with Simon. How are you doing?
Hey, Simon. Hey, Anthony. It's good to be here. I'm a PM on Azure. I work, with you. I'm responsible for Code to Cloud, and that's what I'm here actually to show you guys as well today.
Awesome, and hey, Aarthi, how are you doing today?
Hey, Anthony, thanks for having me on this call. I'm Aarthi Murugan from the Customer Success Unit on the Platform Services side. Happy to be here.
Nice. All right, let's get into it. So as always, not always, this is our second time doing it, but we published a newsletter the day before our live stream so that you can get a preview of what we're going to talk about. As well as all the links, so you don't have to wait for me to put together a list of links and half the time forget to share it after the stream. You have the links ahead of time, and so this is it right here. And I'll also put up the wrong button. This is the link right here to this newsletter. That was very professional. So go to aka.ms/containerapps/newsletter to follow along. All right, I'll try not to press that button again. So we talk about our live stream and then some community highlights. So it's only been about 2 or 3 weeks since our last one. So, but we still managed to kind of come up with 6 of these community highlights. So I'm going to go through them now. So the first link that we have is a blog article. It's a pretty long one. That talks about a journey to containers. And this is by Savario, as well as a couple of other folks at Microsoft. And they don't only talk about container apps, they talk about other services as well. But they talk about how to choose your service, how to build containers, pretty much the whole thing from end to end. It's a very long article, but super detailed and very good. So please check it out. The next one that we have is Dennis, who seems to be a regular featured person in this segment every month. So this time he has an article on how to use custom metrics. And I believe he does, and he kind of graphs it with Grafana and all of that in Azure Container Apps. In the next one, we have Antonio on the Quarkus website. With a workshop on how to deploy to Azure Container Apps. So if you are a developer, especially a Java developer, you can learn how to deploy. Oh, there's a big QR code here, but if anyone wants to scan it, I'll scroll through it really quickly. So you can actually walk through and build out this really nice application here and deploy it to container apps. And next we have Jihao, who has a nice blog post about how to use Azure Valve's volume mounts in Azure Container Apps. And he walks through this using the CLI. It's available on the portal as well. So you can actually learn how he's creating a storage account as well as doing the mount so that you can have access to that as a directory within your Azure Container Apps. And after that, we have Thomas, who has an article about how to use Terraform to set up the image pull from Azure Container Registry. So if you're a Terraform user and you want to learn how to do this the Terraform way, he's got a ton of this stuff laid out in this article. And last but not least, we have Charbel, who has an article here on how to deploy an SFTP service on Azure Container Apps. So one of the things that we recently GA'd was support for TCP. So you don't necessarily have to host an HTTP app on Azure Container Apps. You can host things that talk on different protocols as well. So in this case, he has a nice article on how to do this with. Oh no, what's happening? It appears oh no, I have an ad. Close. I never know which one to click. Whoa. Okay. Well, anyway, check out this article, read some ads, and learn how to deploy an SFTP server to Azure Container Apps. Alrighty. So, and as always, connect with us in the chat, wherever you're watching it from, and we will try to answer any questions that you might have. And back to the newsletter here. The next thing that we're going to talk about are product news. So, Sophia, you want to take this part?
Yeah, so we've got some great product news that we're excited to share. We've been working on stuff with the upcoming build, and so a couple things have come out to prepare for that. So some stuff that's generally available that we've recently announced is inbound IP restrictions for Azure Container Apps, TCP support for Azure Container Apps, and then in public preview we have that Azure Container Apps is available in Azure China. So stuff that we're really excited to announce this week is that in public preview, we've got cross-origin resource sharing. I'm actually really excited about that because that's the first feature that I'm getting over the finish line of into public preview myself. So it's a little feature, but I think it'll be helpful. And then we've got public preview is init containers. Then generally available, we have the GitHub actions for container apps, and then Azure pipeline tasks for container apps. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Sophia. And yeah, feel free to check these announcements out. Some of them I'll be updating this blog post to the actual announcement links because we're technically actually announcing them a day or two. And this is what you get by joining this live stream. So make sure you join us every month so you can get news ahead of time. And this is a good segue into Simon, who's going to talk to us about how to use the new generally available GitHub action and Azure Pipelines task for container apps.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. So I am here to be the guy that shows a feature off that's almost in GA. So there'll be a lot of maybe potential surprises for us. I have a very, I'll walk you guys through, I'll explain all the details here. This is a very basic application, just Flask. I'm not sure we're going to get to see this today. There have been some difficulties when I ran this through because we're rolling this out as we speak. But anyway, so this is my application. I really didn't make any changes to this itself. And what I'm going to start out with is a environment container app. Just, I'm going to use the portal because it's more visual.
Yeah, Simon, I'm going to pause you for a second here. Are you sharing your screen?
Maybe I am not sharing my screen. Oh, look at that. I'm not presenting my screen. I thought you were actually going to do that for me.
Yeah, you need to share it first, and then I can do it for you.
Oh, I will be sharing my screen. And share.
It's the morning. There's always technical difficulties.
Yeah,
and
slam that keyboard harder, Simon.
Now you can see can you see my screen now?
Yep, boom, there it is.
Yes.
Hooray. Okay, so anyway, going back. Here's my app, and then I'm starting out with a container app. This capability, just briefly, is available through various flows. You can go to the portal, and that's what we're going to be doing today. You can also set this up through the Azure CLI or AZ, and then obviously you can set this up through GitHub. If you go to GitHub, you can go to the marketplace, and you'll find this action as well. And then after any of these flows, you'll be able to see a change to your own GitHub repository. So make sure to pull. We'll be reviewing that as well here. And then that essentially ends up being an action. And then that action deploys to Azure Container App. So hopefully we'll see the entire flow of this as we go here. Anyway, so this starts under the continuous deployment flow. It will ask you to first set up your GitHub account. I've already done this in the past. For the very first time when you do this, you'll get presented a window where it asks you to trust Azure. There's going to be some authentication that happens between these two platforms. I've done this already. It's a pretty straightforward flow. Just in case you run into it, I'm going to be selecting my organization. In this case, my app resides in my own repository. I'm going to just pick my app here in my branch. This is the branch that ultimately gets pushed to in order to trigger the action itself. You do need a container registry here at the moment, and then the rest is pretty much hands off after you have to find the registry. There is one last thing. This functionality will set up a service principal so GitHub action can actually deploy. It should be stated that there might be some difficulties here. You might not have that right on your subscription to create a service principal. If you want to go or you run into issues, the error messages, unfortunately, are not the most obvious ones. You can go through, and there is a command you can run to establish, and these are shared. I have a link later on that will be shared. But you can run this command to see if you actually have the permissions to create a service principal. And then after this command succeeds, you can take the details that get shown and actually plug them in yourself in the portal. And anyway, in this case, I'm going to just start this continuous deployment. This will take a few minutes here to kick off and finish. And while that takes place, I'm going to just kind of walk through the rest of this. Once this succeeds, you'll be able to see in your application. We'll probably see this here in the next few seconds. You'll see that the portal will actually go and make a commit. I've done this a few times here already, as you can see. And the commit basically is the action itself already pre-populated for you. It's a pretty straightforward flow. And then anytime you make a commitment to your repository, you actually end up triggering this action flow. So I'm going to do that right now. So I'll just edit a file here, this base file. That's basically just the base for this app. So committing, saving, see. Here's my file. These changes. Push this. And the push has already happened. Actually, this is coincidental. This is great because so in the meantime, the push has already pushed these in here. So we'll actually see that now I have to pull down these changes. So let me go and show these to you guys real quick. So if I go into my code repository, I see that there's a GitHub workflow now. And you'll be able to see right here about a minute ago, this new trigger got pushed. And so that's why I can't actually push, because it wants me to merge these in. So I'm going to do these, pull this down real quick. Exit this. And now we're just gonna do. There you go. So now that we've pushed, we can actually already see that there's action taking place. So this one, so there's a lot going on here at the moment. Actually, there is technically 3 actions on this right now. There is one that will fail, very likely, that we can just ignore. That's from me testing it for the very first time. So you get to see this all life and how we struggle sometimes with this stuff as well. So we're going to cancel this run because I know that won't work. And then I have 2 apps there that basically might or might not succeed. One is the live hello all, and then the other one is the AU live hello all. As I said before, we're rolling this action out one by one at the moment, so some of these regions don't have it yet. So let's see what happens. If we click into here, you'll get actually a pretty cool view of what's going on, and I can explain some of this. One thing I should say is this application actually currently does not have a Docker file. So this action works for both if you have a Docker file in your repository, as well as you don't have a Docker file in your repository. In the case where you don't have a Docker file, we actually use Oryx to detect what your app, and that's what we're looking at right now, is we're detecting what application this is. Is it Node? Is it Python? Is it C#? And then we basically will go and craft the Docker file for you and build a container for you that then gets pushed and then deployed. And that's actually what we're looking at right here, right now. It's building this, pulling down all the various pieces that it needs, including all the pip files, and now setting the registry and then pushing this into the registry. And this might be another minute or two.
Yeah, you mentioned Oryx there. Can you tell us a little bit more about Oryx?
Yeah, so Oryx is kind of a component that it's an open source project. It's essentially a build tool that you can use to basically build any kind of applications with very minimal input. If you guys go to look for GitHub Oryx on Google or Bing or whatever, you'll be able to find the repository, and there's actually a container that you can see that you can just run with a single command that will actually tell you ahead of time if the application will build successfully using Oryx. Most applications build if they're well behaved. You can see the build and deploy action has completed here. I'm also going to go back to show you the screen here. These, as you saw earlier in the portal when we started this flow, we essentially kicked this off, and so now this is actually confirming that it completed, and it will give you a link to actually take you directly to the workflows, which I've already showed you earlier. And so now we can see what happened. Let's see if anything happened, and we have a deployment working. So we have the AU live hello all succeeded. The live hello all also succeeded. So we have 2 apps now. This deployment action, nicely enough, will create a new revision for you. So if you go to your revision management, you'll see that this push was basically, unfortunately, did not succeed, and one of them is provisioning. So this one failed, the other one is provisioning, and this is what I ran into earlier. I think there might be some regional issues with these still. But you can see the GitHub hash matches the revision, and so in this case, when this failed, for example, you could just roll back to the other one and make this active. For whatever reason it failed. I'm not entirely sure. I can check on the other app too. Let me go to my other app. That one succeeded. Other revisions. It's also failed. So I'm not sure why this one failed. I had issues earlier with this timing out in the provisioning state never leaving. These are the benefits of doing this slightly pre-release. We will be getting this ready and working, of course, for you guys by GA. So just to walk you through here one more time, I used the portal to create the flow and establish the connectivity. I revisited the GitHub repository and looked at the flows that were created. Then I triggered this GitHub action via commit. And the last piece that we unfortunately couldn't see was the app working in the container app environment. Sorry about that. You can see there was an app before, there was an action before, and we greatly simplified this. So we'd like to think that this is a lot easier now than this prior version. It's all kind of encapsulated. There's no more CLI commands. We're really looking forward. I think it should be super easy for people once this is all deployed. And we're very happy and hopeful that this will enable a lot of people, both with Docker knowledge and without Docker knowledge, GitHub. That's all I had. Were there any questions from you, Anthony? Anything I missed, maybe?
So there's some comments. So we asked how different people are deploying their apps today in the chat. So I'll share a few with y'all. So Miguel likes to deploy directly from Visual Studio, and then let's see here. Eric likes to deploy using Terraform Cloud, and then Camilo uses Azure Pipeline to create the image, and then
and actually we should say that this is not, I didn't show this through this process here, but we also have the same action for ADO. And yeah, so if you're a user of Azure DevOps, you can essentially utilize this same action, this checkout, build with or without Docker file, and then deploy into your container app, just like what I showed here with GitHub today.
Nice.
I think there's one question, Anthony, that was just above your. You just highlighted it. Awesome.
Yep. So Eric is wondering whether or not it's able to the pipeline task, and I assume the GitHub action as well. Is it able to pull images from an Azure Container Registry that belongs to another subscription?
So you might have to finagle that in place. It's a little trickier there because of the way the service principal will work. I think you might be able to do it, although it would probably be easier if you give the one subscription and the ACA app permissions to pull from the registry on the other subscription first, and then go through the flow instead. I think on its own, we assume you use one identity to do all of the actual lifting behind the scenes. So both the deploy, as well as the build, as well as the push to the registry, would be under one service principal. And so by default, it might not work, but you could edit this action flow under your code base to specify the additional. I'm going to pull it up one more time to just show it to everyone. So you can edit this functionality accordingly to potentially split. You might have to split this out and then do the push to the registry separately before if you have two different subscriptions using it.
Yeah, and actually, I want to point out that what you're kind of talking about there is, I believe, is the auto-generated flow. So if you went and tried to generate this, like using the portal that you just did there or the CLI, I think there are some assumptions that we make there in terms of where the registry lives and all that stuff, and whether you have access to it and all of that. But I believe you should be able to set up a container app separately, whether it's manually or using something like Bicep. that is properly configured to talk to that registry. And then I think the task should be able to deploy subsequent deployments to that app, to that registry. But if not, that's definitely something that we probably should look at. And yeah, please file an issue in our GitHub repo.
Yeah, and just to kind of highlight those edge cases that might not be filled properly, here, this is the official documentation. So you might actually just kind of look through this and look at the actual docs and just kind of craft your own workflow if you have kind of edge cases that require you to make some special accommodations. But as Anthony said, and I kind of shared earlier, I think if you allow your container app to pull from the registry as the first step, then you could use the regular manual flow, the automated flow thereafter. Cool.
Awesome.
Anything else?
No, that was it for questions, I believe. But thanks so much, Simon. And next, we have Aarthi to talk about something new, something we call the Landing Zone Accelerator.
Awesome. Thanks, Anthony. Let me share my screen. Trying to present it. Let me know once you can see my screen.
I think we're still waiting there.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
Can you see my screen now?
All right, the screen is up.
All right. Okay, I'll put it in the presentation mode. All right. Hey, everyone. Really happy to be here in the Container Apps community call. I'm going to present about the Landing Zone Accelerator concepts. I am Aarthi Murugan, Senior Program Manager from the App Innovation Customer Success Unit team. So I have split this Landing Zone Accelerator topic into 3 buckets. First, to introduce the concept of Landing Zone Accelerator. And the second is about what are we doing with the container apps in terms, the reference architecture and the implementation, and do a demo and jump into any questions to answer. So to start with, for freshers, what are Azure landing zones, right? So it basically helps our customers' digital transformation journey to Azure in a better footprint across the different enterprise pillars like security, governance, networking, and identity. And it can be from your on-prem to Azure, or you might be building net new applications. And it considers all the different kind of platform resources, be it starting from the IaaS to PaaS services. And you started by, like we can take an analogy of building a city, right? So before you start building and then start having your people come in, you start putting the essential services like roads, water, sewage, or, utilities like power and gas pipelines. Similar way, before you start your Azure journey, you started with a good footprint of setting your networking, identity, and different governance policies in place. How do you monitor before you deploy your applications into the production region? So this is where today's focus is going to be on the Azure Container Apps, which is our PaaS product, giving a serverless capacity, scale up, scale down to 0, which helps us to build our apps on a Kubernetes-based platforms. And the focus is going to be apps, not infrastructure, and that's where Landing Zone Accelerator is going to help. Right. So what is Landing Zone Accelerator? So Landing Zone Accelerators are packaged architectural guidance that comes up with reference architecture, reference implementation, and automation. It really accelerates our customers to deploy their workloads in a production grade. in a faster way. It comes with a set of design principles, guidelines, and recommendations across 4 different areas. And you can use the reference implementation to get started. It has an end-to-end guidance that you can start constructing. And once you provision it, you can just focus on the applications as it takes care of all the different areas of concerns in terms of network security, identity, like I mentioned before. And the use cases that we are going to address with respect to ACA Landing Zone Accelerator is any customer who are developing well-architected and microservices workloads, who are looking to deploy it in a secure manner and trying to adopt container apps. And any microservices-based workloads or even monoliths, containerized workloads, they can use this landing zone accelerator. Like I said before, this has proven to reduce the time to value and deploy their containerized workloads in a production enterprise scale environment. And it has got an end-to-end IAC sample. And with this, after provisioning this infrastructure, we have also given guidance on how can you deploy a sample application. We have got 2 great samples, one from the in terms of Java and another from in terms of our .NET workshop that got flashed in our last month's community call. So you will be seeing that. So like I said, we have these 4 different design areas that we have taken into consideration and given deeper considerations and recommendations. In terms of identity, it's basically planning for authentication inside your landing zone, right? So we greatly recommend you if you are looking for an authentication, use Azure AD or Azure AD B2C, and consider using managed identities because it takes care of all your managing the credentials, right? You don't need to do it; it takes care it for you. And always consider assigning least privilege permissions using the built-in roles. In terms of networking, it is about planning for your IP addressing and sizing. For container apps, you really need a dedicated subnet. The CIDR of subnet should be /23 or larger, but with the latest releases, we are getting smaller subnets. Thanks to Anthony and his team, who has made this huge effort. And this has been a huge ask as well for a smaller subnets, and consider that as well based on your needs. And provision it using a virtual network. And if you are going to publish an internet-facing app services, use Azure App Gateway or Azure Front Door for multi-region deployments. In terms of operations, we are recommending in terms of understand your ACA limits, and if you need extra limits, submit a request that will be addressed, and you can use ACA health probes. And if you are looking for a multi-tenancy, it can be achieved in various ways. If you are looking for a resource isolation, go for ACA environments for a multi-tenancy purposes. And for security purposes, we are recommending the cloud security benchmark, the baseline that has been released, and that is going to be the foundation for the very first scenario that we have come up on this landing zone accelerator. And this is the reference architecture that we have come up with. You can see we are using a typical hub and spoke model. The spoke is where we are going to place our container apps environment, and the workloads are going to be deployed in that spoke VNet. And we have separate subnets for supporting services like Key Vault, container registry. Obviously, you need to have a registry, and the log analytics workspace. And we also have private DNS zones. For ingress, we are the inbound connectivity is established. You can do it with two different options we are giving. One is through App Gateway with WAF, and if you are looking for a multi-region deployment, you can go with the Azure Front Door Premium with the WAF. So we are providing this infrastructure so that it can be your workloads can be deployed in a secure and scalable manner. With that, would like to go through the deployment options. So we have got a couple of deployment options. One is the standalone one, which comes out with a single statement deployment with the AZ CLI, which I will be demoing shortly. And we have also got the automation in place for in terms of GitHub Actions as well as Azure DevOps pipeline. So we have got a step-by-step guidance on how to set up your pipelines or set up your actions workflow. If you are on a learning path and if you want to understand how these different modules are deployed, you have a modularized way of step-by-step deployment as well, where you can deploy the hub first, then go to the spoke and get the supporting services, container app environment. So it has a 6-step process that you can do it step by step and understand how the different services are getting deployed. And like I said before, we have got two sample app deployments. The guidance has been added as well for once you provision container apps environment, how you deploy the workloads into the ACA LZA. With that, I would like to quickly showcase the landing zone accelerator repo. So this is our repo where we have published these assets. The reference architecture, the design area guidance is fully detailed. You can look into every specific area that you are looking for. We have provided the considerations and the recommendations. And the very first scenario, like I mentioned, is the secure baseline in an internal environment. And you can get started by cloning this repo, which I have done it already. So a couple of things that I would like to highlight here is right now we have got the bicep implementation in place, and Terraform is in progress. We are planning to release it by end of this month or early next month. And you can see the modules here fully modularized for Hub and for Spoke, the supporting services. You go and deploy your container apps environment. And if you're trying to deploy only a hello world sample app and then just to do a smoke test purposes, you can go with a hello world sample app, or you can go for a full-fledged deployment with the sample app that we have given in place here. So it has a very good naming module that we have introduced in this place, so which I would like to highlight. So which typically takes care of how you can put the naming for the different resources here. And we have also got, for example, the abbreviations for the different resources we have used. And if you are picking a specific region, we augment that as well into your naming convention. So this all goes under the shared folder. And we have got for a single step deployment, all you need to do is go into this main.bicep and then get it fired away. So let's get started. All right, so I'm just going to get commands here. All it needs for the very first one is setting up your location and set up the LZA deployment name, and you need to fire the AZ deployment command.
Yeah, I'd like to. I'm actually just coming off of editing one of these. I find them very useful, and if anyone is wondering what the inputs are, then another file to visit and take a look at is also the main.parameters.json, which kind of shows you, hey, these are the environment variables you could be setting to kind of have an impact on this deployment. And that's what Aarthi is doing here at the moment as well. So you kind of see the export functionality and so on and so forth.
Yeah, thank you so much for pointing that out. I completely forgot about that. So thanks for mentioning that. So the parameters file, you can mention the workload names and the environment. If you're going to do for dev, desktop, prod, you can do that. So that way the naming module picks all the parameters from here and stitches it all in a very nice manner. And if you are looking for deploying just a hello world sample, you can just say true here. So that takes care of deploying a hello world sample. So for our demo purposes, I'm going to pick that. And if you need to deploy the sample application, just set that to false. And the rest of the parameters, please take a look and edit it as needed. So let's go with the deployment now. I have set the location. I have picked North Europe. And for LZA deployment name, I provided a name with bicep ACA LZA. Now let's do the deployment, AZ deployment. I'm going to create now. Make sure you're under the bicep folder. I'm already in here. When you first clone, it goes to your the parent folder structure. So go into the right folder structure and call in your template file, main.bicep, and I pass my location and provide the name. Have your parameters file.
And Aarthi, if you don't mind, if you can control plus the screen a couple of times to make the font a little bit bigger, that'd be great.
Okay.
Nice, thanks.
Okay, thanks, Anthony. All right, so it's telling me there is a new bicep releases available. So I should take care of that in my next upgrade. But you can see the deployment has started. It has taken the main.bicep and all the parameters that we have mentioned in this main.parameters.json C file. This deployment takes about 15 to 20 minutes based on your the location that you picked and based on the traffic as well. And in interest of time, I have already pre-provisioned this landing zone accelerator. I can quickly show you that. So what you get is once you complete that, once the deployment gets completed, you get to see two resource groups, one for the hub and one for the spoke. If you go into the spoke here, you can see here the container apps environment and the container app getting deployed. And for monitoring, we have added the application insights. And for this is a secure baseline, right? So we have put in the security in place. So you can see the virtual network for the spoke. And we have got the NSGs even more. We have tightened it up by placing the NSGs and adding the rules in there. So you can see separate NSGs present here. And also we are connecting to our supporting services like Key Vault and a container registry. For example, you can see here, this is a private endpoint, and there is a private endpoint for Key Vault. This one is for container registry, and we have got the log analytics workspace configured too to collect all the logs that is coming out of it. And we have used the managed identities to connect to Key Vault and other supporting services. And the egress, I have picked the application gateway, but you have an option to pick the Azure front door as well. So once this gets all run, you should be able to access the container apps, the Hello World app by getting into the application gateway, get this public IP address. And once you access this, you should be able to see this wonderful Welcome to Azure Container Apps page, the Hello World page. And with that, I would highly encourage all of you to get started. Go and clone the repo, and share your feedback to us. Submit your PR, or create issues. We'll be happy to address them. And currently, we are trying to piloting this. And if you have any feedback, we would like to incorporate them. And up next, we are looking for the Terraform implementation. And we are also planning to integrate with UDR and add Redis as well into it. So those are the items that I would like to share in today's call, and happy to answer any questions if we have any.
That is awesome, Aarthi. Yeah, we've had so many customers trying to set container apps, as well as a bunch of other things, Azure resources within, within their production environments, and they've all kind of had to come up with their own way of doing things. And just having it all here deployable within 15, 20 minutes, and actually seeing how like a proper way of actually deploying all these things securely, and also in a very scalable way. It's really awesome. Thanks so much for showing us this.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony.
And let's take a look and see if we have any comments or questions. Yep, so Tiago's asking for the links in your slides. So I'll grab those from you, Aarthi, and I'll update our newsletter.
Sure.
And that's where folks can get those links. And you can get the newsletter through the link that's on the screen currently. And I think we have some other questions here as well. This one's a bit of a product question. If Eric wants to know if there's a way to actually, like if we have plans to integrate some sort of a WAF or web application firewall into Azure Container Apps. We don't currently have this planned, but would love to kind of hear from you about what you're looking for there, whether you're looking for just a WAF capability that's built into Container Apps, or if you're looking for an easier way to connect a container app with something like an Azure App Gateway or a Azure Front Door instance. And that's actually a good segue into
Anthony. What is the current? Well, actually, now I'm killing your segue for you. I apologize, but there is something built into container apps already that we are currently using for ingress control, right? Envoy, right?
Yes, correct. But Envoy doesn't provide any web application firewall kind of things, like like a lot of the security kind of related things that you would need to do, denial of service attacks and all that stuff. That there's some of that in place, but like you do want to have like a full blown WAF feature set.
Yeah. Gotcha.
in a lot of applications. And currently what customers are doing is that they're creating an app gateway or a front door instance in front of container apps. And I think what Eric's asking is an easier way to do this, and maybe a built-in way to do this. So yeah, I want to point out that we do have a repo at github.com/microsoft/Azure-container-apps. And there is where you can actually file issues and feature requests and things like that. So I searched quickly for WAF and also App Gateway. There are some issues there. So Eric, if you can kind of actually chime in on some of those or create a new one, that would be great. And then we can kind of have that discussion and see whether or not that is a fit for that in our product. All right. Yeah, and I don't know if there's any other questions in the comments. Let me just take a quick look. I do know that there was a comment here by Edward or Eduard in our newsletter, and so he likes a lot of the features that we're announcing. Really likes the core support, Sophia, that Sophia's been working so hard on. But he would also like to know if there's any advice for running ML containers, machine learning containers in container apps, or if they should try a different container platform.
Can you
I think
talk about your latest hotness yet? Is that that you worked on for the last couple of months would be a well-suited?
Some of it. So I will talk a little bit about some of the stuff. So we have announced some stuff. So we have some things announcing the next month or so. There might be a big event somewhere that we might be announcing some things at. So currently for ML, I think there's a few ways to look at it. So for training, I think we could do some work there. There's been some requests for support for GPU and things like that. We're currently investigating that. And there's also, a need for kind of like having these bigger resources that you can run these containers on. So going beyond the 2 CPUs and 4 gigabytes of memory. So we've kind of done that with the latest plan and pricing structure that we announced last month, so that you can actually go up to 4 gigabytes and 4 CPUs and 8 gigabytes of RAM in the consumption plan. And if that's still not enough, you can actually use a dedicated plan and create these memory optimized or just generally larger machines that you can deploy your container apps to. In some cases, that helps out with machine learning workloads. And also, we're working on features like a jobs feature. So you can actually run containers that do more of a batch processing. Quite often, folks are looking for something like that to be able to run their machine learning models, maybe a little bit of training. So
you should say the batch jobs should be working. That's what I was thinking, is when he was asking about this, right? Is it like, it's good for training, right? Less so for inference, but I think for training, the jobs would work very well.
Yeah, cool. And some of the stuff that we talked about, we've kind of shared on our roadmap. So feel free to kind of browse over to our roadmap. All these links are in the newsletter, so I'm not going to keep sharing these individual links. And anything you don't see here, please file an issue in our GitHub repo. And with that, I think we're at time. I want to thank Sophia, Aarthi, and Simon for joining us today and sharing all the GitHub actions and Azure pipeline tasks goodness, as well as the landing zone accelerators to help us kind of deploy these really secure and enterprise scale applications to container apps. And to all of you out there, thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.
See you all. It's great hanging with you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Everyone, bye.